Emily, Demetra, you guys are off for after this for a few things, coming back to Austin. Nia, you're here.
Yep.
Dan, obviously here. And then I'll be joining the rest of the team. John Davern, who's not here with us, Ashley, who was here yesterday, and Brian Dybel will all be in Madison for NCAA Champs this weekend. So a lot going on, but thank you guys so much for being here. Excited to have you on this team. All right, we have our FloTrack podcast will continue as we get through the final day here at TRE. TRE Live will follow our show, and they'll have a few hours left of programming. But for our show today, I'm going to be joined with Nia Gibson, who we just introduced to you, and we'll have two more guests. Our first will be Drew Whitcomb, joining us in a moment from WearTesters. And we'll be talking about all things on this TRE convention floor. But first, Nia, back so soon. Great to have you.
Did you miss me?
I did miss you. And we're also here with Drew. Drew, what's going on? Great to have you on the show.
Hey, happy to be here.
So give us a little background. Where are you out of? What is WearTesters? And what brings you to TRE?
So I'm out of Colorado. WearTesters is completely remote team. We do shoe reviews. We started as a basketball shoe review site. I played basketball all throughout school, but I also ran in high school. So when we finally turned it into our full-time jobs, both the YouTube channel and website, we said, we've got to go into another sport. I said, well, it's time for me to get back into running. And little did I know that, now 7 marathons later, testing all these shoes, I'm way too deep. I never intended to get this deep.
So why running? Why was that the sport after basketball?
Well, this was set the stage for you. 2017, just kind of perfect timing. The technology was starting to pop off, and most of our readership grew up in the 90s, 2000s with, Jordans and basketball shoes, where technology was part of what got them out to work out, to exercise. And so a lot of our readers were starting to ask us about, that was prime 4% time. They were asking, what's this whole thing about? And so it just was a happy accident that was the right timing, and that I remembered the running community being so great. I grew up in Orlando, shout out Track Shack. It was amazing to see the marathon trials there this year, but that running community there really was amazing. As someone that was, coming from basketball, thinking running was all about punishment, but you show up in Track Shack and they're just like, no, let's get you spikes. Let's get you looking good so you can set a PR. And that really made a difference, stuck in my mind. So all those years later, I was like, you know what? It sounds really fun to get back into running now. Yeah, there's technology in the shoes, but there's some great people in running too.
I got to ask, being at TRE, and you've been in this field for so long, what do you think makes the perfect running shoe? Like, what entails to give me a 10 out of 10 review?
That's tough, and the bullseye's always changing. And as you talk to the various PLMs at the companies, they know that too. And right now, it's soft, but not too soft, right? Because you can be too soft. And the upper is not too thick where you're sweating, like crazy in the summer. There are all these components on both below the foot and above the foot that make a huge difference. And there are a little bit of trends that change. We went really soft, and one of the trends here at the show is that they're adding stack height to shoes, just a little bit, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, often in the heel, because what they've noticed is as we use those softer shoes for marathons, we all lose our form as we are breaking down in a marathon or longer race. And what happens is we start crashing on that heel, it changes the effective drop of the shoe. So really they intended it to be an 8 millimeter drop. All of a sudden it feels like a 4 or 5 to the person wearing it at the perfectly worst time, because you need a consistent experience, especially as the rest of your form, your hips are giving out, your knees, whatever it is, whatever your problem area is. And so that's one thing that I think brands are noticing and starting to fix about a trend, because it was all about who could have the softest last year probably, right? And those were the shoes that were winning. Those were the shoes that consumers were voting for with their wallets. This year it's a little different. Some are saying, oh, you know what, I don't need a plate. I run better without a plate, things like that. So consumers are starting to take it back to what feels best on foot for them for whatever effort they're trying to do.
So just quick follow-up to that. How how do you guys maintain this sense of adaptability? Because it seems like the trends are forever changing. And then on top of that, what people may like, and then it probably also depends on someone's height, stature, the
Yep.
way they run. Do they like run on the outsides of their feet or the inside? Or they maybe knock-kneed, pigeon-toed?
Yep.
How do you how do you keep up with that?
Well, at the end of the day, we're shoe nerds, so we want to geek out with the product people. Like, I've got wall-to-wall meetings both days here, just sitting with them, asking them what feedback their wet testers are giving. They're asking me what I think of the shoes. So I just love that. But all of our testers are just really good at knowing what's going on with their feet. That's like the superpower. It's like even when they're running, they could be running an all-out mile and they're like, "Oh, I really like these spikes. It's giving me a nice bounce," or whatever. Those are the thoughts going through their head that are distracting them from the pain that is happening, right? And so I think it's that, and just being aware and always being willing to ask other people, because feet are weird, feet are different. So many people, you mentioned several different, potential ailments you could have with the feet, right? Plantar pain, so many people have that, heel pain, and certain things like heel counters are necessary for some because they need the stability, but others who might have a Haglund's deformity, it's a deal breaker. The shoe is ruined for them. And so the way to when we have reviews on YouTube, we say, this is the type of person that the shoe is perfect for. And if you have these things going on with your feet, you're probably going to want to avoid this one. And, the brands, the reason they keep like seeding and sending shoes to reviewers that do those sort of things, it's because it minimizes returns for them, and it gets people already knowing what the experience is what to expect when that shoe shows up at their door, oftentimes ordered from online nowadays, and so they don't get a chance to try it on and see, does this fit a half size small? Does this fit a half size big? That sort of thing. They need to rely on someone else for that.
Curious about the process for you guys. Like, you're called WearTesters, you're testing product, you're doing the reviews, but like, how does it actually work? How many people are testing these things?
Yep.
What's the process they're going to get like a full review of a shoe?
Yeah, so originally it was just me and my co-founder testing basketball shoes, and slowly as we've expanded, we've tried to keep about 2 in every product category. So in running, with running shoes, I have a female reviewer, I have another male reviewer. Which shoe we send to which reviewer depends on what's the brand's goal with that shoe, right? And so you need to have a diversity. Like my female runner, she's 5 foot nothing, hardly weighs anything, but a very typical female runner in many ways. And my other reviewer, he's a back of the packer. He is running as a complement to his other fitness, and so we try and round out that viewpoint when we tackle a shoe. Have the brands send us, or we buy 2 of each shoe. Then on the trail side, I'm kind of more of a casual trail runner, but I have a guy that just rips the hardest efforts up mountains ever, and he's like the counterbalance to that, so that we can hit both viewpoints. And that's kind of across all our categories, pickleball being the newest one we added, is like, we are just trying to balance that viewpoint because people are so different in their approach to running or basketball or whatever. They need various viewpoints.
How did you guys, just to like redirect the conversation a little bit, how did you guys combat certain challenges you may have been hit with, just to kind of like overcome certain learning curves?
Being a small business, how to actually turn it from a side hustle into a full-on, hey, this actually will pay our salaries and we can quit our day jobs, that was filled with challenges. I had to teach myself affiliate marketing, in terms of having a link that goes to a retailer or a manufacturer and someone buys it and then they kick back a little percentage, because that's better than ads. I don't want the site chock full of ads, right? Although we do have ads like on YouTube and stuff like that, they do support us. You have to balance that experience, and sometimes you make that mistake and you're like, well, the site looks awful right now, we got to take that particular ad off. And understanding how to deal with all the various PR people. They have their jobs. They're trying to get a message out about a shoe. It's not always the right message, or it's not what your audience needs. Our audience is a lot of athletes who come from very different sporting disciplines, and they end up at us because, we review all the Jordans and stuff, so they find us that way, but then they're like, oh, they also do running shoes. I should check out the running shoe reviews. So I never know where they're coming from, so I try and make sure that we never get too technical with terms. I would say we are shoe nerds, so we've done that sometimes, but then like I talk with some beginners and they say, hey, tone it down, or at least define these weird words that you're using. Because when I'm talking to a shoe designer, I'm talking like a completely different language than really what's on the website.
That makes sense.
I'm curious, this year, one, how many years have you been at TRE? And then two,
4 years.
This is
Yep.
year 4? Okay. What's the experience like this year, and what are you seeing in terms of trends? You mentioned trends last year that have maybe changed, but what's ahead for us?
Yeah, so there's the foam one where they're kind of tweaking based on the foams have been so soft, they need a little bit of extra millimeters of foam. But what I've noticed is it's huge this year. Like, just in the past 4 years, every year it's ramped up. You can see the running boom personified in here. All the brands, like the apparel choices we have versus when I was running in high school, it is amazing to be a runner. Like, my son's 11 and he's on his cross country team, and I'm like, bro, you can pick any shoe, you can wear chicken legs shorts, you can go upscale and wear Viore, whatever you want to wear, And I'm just like, this is not how it was. Like, I was wearing basketball shorts at, track practice, and the real good guys were like making fun of me at first because they're like, what are you doing, And so, but I didn't know any better, and there really weren't a ton of options, right? Like, I wasn't about to put on split shorts as a, converted basketball athlete, right? But now we have all these half tights that are just amazing, and it makes it so accessible for people coming from other sports. Like, guys coming from baseball, they're used to wearing tights underneath. Guys coming from football, used to wearing tights underneath. So now they come to our site, and I can recommend a pair of half tights with a lot of pockets for their phone, and these options just make running so much more accessible. And that's what I'm seeing, is just this accessibility of running throughout all of the product lines. And probably one last trend is, I think the running shoe companies have figured out that some of their lines are very complicated, and people come and they're like, well, which shoe should I buy out of your 25, right? And they're starting to rename their lines to very simple, like, this is our responsive line, this is our max cushion line, so that people understand it more. Because, that's oftentimes, that's why people end up with us, because they're like, well, I love Adidas or I love Nike, but which one should I get? And I think the brands are starting to realize, oh, we have to do a little bit better job educating that if you're this type of runner or this type of person, this is the shoe that is really going to speak to you and give you the best experience.
So while we're talking about TRE and everything that it entails, have you seen a shoe, whether it's on someone's feet or maybe we're passing by a booth, that you stood on and you're like, oh, that's a shoe?
One that came out before TRE, but they're showing here, is the Brooks Glycerin Max. It's got an amazing bouncy forefoot, but they're letting the foam be the story, because it's kind of like a two-tiered. There's a color underneath the white, and so I think Brooks has really found some fashion sense there, which they haven't always had, unfortunately for them, and which hasn't hurt them really, because honestly, they sell a lot of shoes, but that, like, people want to look fresh now when they're running, and Brooks is doing a great job. Nike's got some new stuff. You can also tell, like, by the colors, orange is going to be big in 2025. A lot of orange out there, whether it's accents or whole orange shoes. And so I don't know how I feel about the orange yet, but that is another thing that you see that fashion creeping in, which it always has existed in some of these other sports, right? There's a lot of basketball players who would never wear something that didn't look good. I think we're starting to see that in running. You've got personalities like Sha'Carri. Sha'Carri always looks great on the track, right? And I think people see that and they're like, well, I'm going to look great in my marathon or in my, turkey trot. Heck, like, the turkey trot, like, apparel has gotten better. Like, every year I've been in running, right? I expect I'm going to line up next week and I'm going to see some people in, like, fresh head to toe Say Sky or something like that, and with some amazing shoes on, and I'm going to love it, because I'm like, this is cool. Like, we're all, like, coming out here looking good, running hard.
I appreciate the comment you just made when you're talking about the Brooks shoe, and you made a comment about they haven't always been super fashionable,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And it stood out because you're in a position where you obviously have relationships with all the brands, but, like, your credibility relies on your ability to be critical, right? And I guess fair and critical, right? So with that, I'm curious, before we let you go, what, if someone's looking for reviews, why WearTesters? What makes you guys different, and the place that people should be going to get their reviews, and how do they find you?
You know, I don't know that we're the best place for the ultra running nerd that has 10 races on the calendar, but for anyone that has 1 or 0 races on the calendar, we're the perfect fit because we cover all these sports. They probably have something else they do besides running, which they can also get a shoe review of that while they're there. But also, we're willing to speak our minds, and we will call people out. You know, oh, these laces are horrible. You know, and we will give people credit. Like if they're trying something new, we're going to give them credit for that. We're going to say, oh, it didn't work, but you know, guess what? They can get that right on the next one. And we try and like talk through a shoe in terms of pros and cons in a way that if the cons don't matter to you, you may say, oh, well, like those are cons to some people, but not to my foot. That's actually like, I don't worry about any of it. Like, you know, some people don't worry about traction because they're always on a treadmill, right? And so if the traction is bad, that doesn't matter to someone that just does treadmill running, and they can look at that review and say, oh, that shoe's perfect for me, and even better, like it's going to go on sale because it doesn't have great traction, and I'm going to grab a couple pairs on sale. So that's what we try and do, is point people towards all the aspects that work or don't work for a shoe so that they can choose for themselves. You know, we want like educated, you know, consumers that are really like thinking about their own foot as they are going through the review.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Drew, thank you
guys.
so much for taking some time. Excited to see what comes out from you guys after